My husband cried at his mother's funeral, but she wasn't dead. That's the line that still sits heavy on my tongue, even now. Every time I think I've processed it, a new memory rises up like something uninvited, tapping me on the shoulder, asking me if I've really faced the truth yet. I remember that morning. The church smelled of old wood and lemon polish. The ceiling fans clicked with a tired rhythm. People moved in soft whispers, the kind that carry more guilt than grief. And there he was, my husband, Daniel, kneeling right beside the closed casket, his face buried in his hands, shoulders shaking as if the loss had broken him in half. I stood behind him, one palm on his back, more confused than heartbroken. I had met his mother only once in the 9 years we were married. One awkward lunch, one stiff hug, one polite smile, and then nothing. No visits, no birthdays, no holidays. Daniel always had an excuse. She's not well. She doesn't like visitors. We're not that close. But grief? Grief doesn't lie. And the way he sobbed, it felt real. Or maybe I was the fool. Standing there in a black dress I had dug from the back of my closet, trying to comfort a man whose entire life suddenly felt like a puzzle I had never been given the edge pieces for. I didn't cry at the funeral. Not because I didn't care, but because something inside me felt wrong. Like a quiet tapping under the floorboards. A truth that hadn't yet learned to speak. I remembered the silence of that moment so clearly. Daniel's tears, the pastor's soft voice, the hollow thud of the dirt hitting the casket, the distant bells ringing noon. I remember thinking, this doesn't feel like goodbye. This feels like a performance. I even told myself I was being cruel for thinking it. But I had no idea. Not yet. Not until the day I heard her voice. Before everything cracked open, our life was plain in the quiet way most marriages look from the outside. Simple routines, familiar meals, a man who liked order, and a woman, me, who grew up hungry for warmth. Daniel and I met in a small accounting firm where I worked the front desk. He was steady, predictable, polite. The type who ironed his shirts the night before and labeled the leftovers in the fridge. I used to tease him about it. He'd just smile, the corner of his mouth lifting slowly, like it had to be permitted first. Our home reflected him more than me. Neutral colors, clean lines, a fridge full of carefully arranged condiments. I kept asking if we could add some photos, our wedding picture, maybe a few from our trips. But he always brushed it off. Let's keep things uncluttered, he'd say. I thought it was just preference. I didn't know he was hiding pieces of himself. Still, I found comfort in the routine. Every morning, I made him breakfast. Eggs soft over toast, a slice of fruit, black coffee. He always thanked me with a small kiss on the forehead. I used to think that meant something. Every evening, he'd sit in his favorite armchair, shoes placed neatly beside the table, reading the same newspaper twice. I'd fold laundry and listen to the soft rustle of the pages turning. We weren't fiery, we weren't passionate, but we were stable. Or so I thought. There were signs even before the funeral. Things that didn't scream for attention, but whispered if you listened long enough. He never spoke of his childhood, never mentioned friends or cousins, never brought up memories with his mother. The one time I asked about her, he tensed so visibly that I changed the subject. I thought I was respecting boundaries. In reality, I was walking around landmines I didn't know existed. 9 years. 9 years of marriage, and I couldn't have told you a single story from his childhood. That should have bothered me. But I told myself, every family is different. Every person carries their own silences. I didn't know some silences are built to hide things. 2 weeks before the funeral, something happened that didn't make sense at the time. I walked past Daniel's office door late one night. It was cracked open just enough for the glow of his computer screen to spill out. He was on the phone, voice low, strained. "No, I told you I can't. Stop asking. It's not my responsibility anymore." A woman's voice leaked through, older, trembling. I couldn't make out the words, but I could feel the desperation. Daniel ended the call abruptly, closing the laptop so fast it clapped. When he noticed me standing there, he stiffened. "Work stuff, go to bed." That's it. Just those 2 words, no explanation. I wanted to ask, who was that? Why did you sound angry? Why did she sound sad? But something in his expression stopped me. His face didn't look like the man I married. It looked cornered. He didn't speak to me the rest of the night. 3 days later, he received another call. He didn't answer it, but the look on his face made my stomach twist. Then came the funeral announcement. Just like that. No lead up, no hospital visit, no details. "She passed this morning. We weren't close, but I should go. Will you come with me?" Of course I went. Of course I supported him. I stood beside him in that church, holding his shaking hand, comforting him like a wife should. Never once imagining the entire funeral was a lie. After the burial, life slipped back into its usual rhythm, almost too smoothly. Daniel returned to work the next day. No mourning, no reflection, no framed photo of his mother. He didn't mention her again. One evening, while sorting laundry, I found a folded paper in his jeans pocket. A receipt from a hardware store. Nothing unusual, until I noticed the date. The exact date of his mother's supposed death. And the time? Exactly when he said he was at the hospital with her. The receipt listed rope, duct tape, gloves, and a large storage bin. My chest tightened, not because I thought he murdered someone, my mind didn't go there, but because of the secrecy. Because he was somewhere else that day. Because he had lied. I held the receipt in my hand for a long time, the edges crumpling under my fingers. I didn't confront him. Not yet. I told myself I was overthinking, that coincidences happen, that maybe the store was near the hospital. But that tapping under the floorboards got louder. 3 days later, it burst through. And the voice I heard shattered everything. I was in the kitchen washing dishes when it happened. The sun was slipping through the window, painting thin lines of gold across the counter. The house was quiet. Daniel wasn't home yet. I had just reached for a towel when my phone buzzed. A number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it, but something, a soft, uneasy instinct, made me answer. "Hello?" Silence for a moment. Then a frail, trembling voice. "Danny?" My breath caught. It was a woman's voice. Old, soft, familiar in a way that made my skin prickle. Who is this?" I asked carefully. A shaky inhale. "I'm sorry, I thought this was my son's number." I gripped the counter. "Your son?" "Yes," she whispered. "I was trying to reach him. He hasn't picked up in weeks." Something in my chest snapped. A clean, sharp break. Because there was no mistaking the voice. I had heard it once before, through a thin doorway, late at night, pleading with Daniel. The same voice from the phone call he lied about. The same voice he said belonged to someone from work. The same voice that should have been 6 feet under. My voice came out thin. "Ma'am, who are you trying to reach?" "My boy. My Danny. He's all I have." This is the number he used to call me. My hands turned cold. Ma'am, your son, what's his name? Daniel Fisher. I'm his mother. I closed my eyes. My body swayed. The room felt unreal. She continued speaking, not knowing she was unraveling my world one stitch at a time. She said he was coming to visit, but he never came. The neighborhood kids helped me with groceries this week. I didn't want to bother him. My throat tightened. A living mother, a lonely voice, a funeral that never happened, and a husband who cried over an empty casket. I forced my voice steady. Ma'am, I think there's something you should know. No, she said quickly, her voice cracking. Please don't say it. Please don't tell me my boy is hurt. I can't take it. My heart squeezed painfully. I won't say anything like that, I whispered. But I think you and I need to talk. There was a long silence. Then she said, Where are you? I don't remember grabbing my keys. I don't remember locking the door. I remember only the drive, fast, shaky, my mind racing faster than the car. Her address wasn't far, tucked into an aging neighborhood with cracked sidewalks and leaning mailboxes. When I pulled up, a small blue house sat under a tired oak tree. The porch light flickered even though it was daylight. A wind chime clinked softly, the sound gentle but lonely. I stepped out and stood there a moment, breathing in the quiet. The truth weighed against my chest like wet sand. I knocked lightly. The door opened just a few inches. A woman peered through the crack. Gray hair pulled into a loose bun that had fallen out of place, thin face, lined but kind, eyes soft and hopeful. Are you her? She asked. I'm his wife, I said. Her hand loosened on the door. Her knees seemed to wobble. Oh, she breathed. So, you truly exist. He never told me much, just said he was married, didn't even share your name. She stepped back to let me in. The house smelled faintly of lavender powder and something simmering in the kitchen. The furniture was old, mismatched, a knitted blanket draped over the sofa, edges frayed from use. The home felt warm, but worn. Lived in, not unloved. She offered me tea, but her hand shook as she carried the cups. I gently took the tray from her. I'm Margaret, she said quietly. Danny's mom. I sat across from her, heart pounding hard enough to feel in my teeth. I'm Laura. She smiled faintly. He always said you liked simple names. It made me happy. I thought maybe you'd bring light into his life. The guilt hit me harder than I expected. I wasn't prepared to feel sympathy for the woman I thought was dead. Mrs. Fisher, I began softly. She waved her hand. Call me Margaret. I haven't been a Mrs. in a long time. I nodded. Margaret, Daniel told me that you passed away. Her hand froze midair. The teacup rattled. A drop of tea splashed onto the saucer. What? He told me you died. There was a funeral, a casket, a burial. He made me attend. Her eyes filled with tears. Silent, stunned tears that reflected more confusion than pain. Oh my God. She pressed a trembling hand to her lips. Why would he... She broke off, shaking her head again and again as if to try to rattle loose the answer. I thought he was staying away because I was too much trouble, she said in a voice barely audible. Because I'm old? Because I can't move like I used to? Her eyes met mine, red and glistening. But to pretend I'm dead? To cry over me? What kind of son? She couldn't finish. I didn't push her. After a long moment, she whispered, "He's lying about something big. I can feel it. He's been lying for years." I swallowed. What happened between you two? Her face changed, like a shadow passed through her expression. Not anger, not sadness, something deeper. Something that comes from old wounds that never healed right. "I was a young mother," she said quietly. "His father left early. I raised him alone. He was a smart boy. Too smart, sometimes. He always took care of himself. He didn't like asking for help, and he didn't like when I did." I leaned in. "What do you mean?" She hesitated. "He didn't like seeing me weak. When I got sick a few years ago, he disappeared for months. He said he was ashamed of me relying on others." My breath turned cold. "He said people who can't take care of themselves don't deserve to be taken care of." Something inside me recoiled. Those were Daniel's exact words once, spoken casually as if it was just a philosophy. I had brushed it off then. I shouldn't have. "Margaret, Daniel support you financially?" She gave a short, humorless laugh. "He sends me $50 a month, sometimes." $50? For his elderly mother? Who cooked with one hand pressed to her hip, who walked with a limp that looked too painful to ignore, who lived alone in a house that needed repairs. "And he told me," she continued, wiping her eyes, "that he didn't want you involved, said you were fragile and didn't need extra stress." I stared at her. Fragile? Stress? He was hiding her from me, and hiding me from her. A web of lies weaving itself around both of us. And now a fake funeral? A fake death? This wasn't just avoidance. This was a story built carefully, brick by brick, until he believed it himself. "Margaret," I said quietly, "I need to know everything." She nodded, her voice breaking. "I'll tell you. But please, stay with me a while. I'm not ready to be alone with this." So I did. For the next 2 hours, she told me pieces of their past. The good, the hurtful, the things she blamed herself for, the things she wished she had done differently. By the time she finished, the sun outside had dipped into late afternoon. Her kitchen was filled with soft orange light, and my heart felt split open. When I finally stood to leave, she reached for my hand. "Please don't tell him I found you. He'll be angry. I don't want him to think I'm meddling." I squeezed her hand. "I won't tell him anything. But Margaret?" I drove home with my hands still trembling on the wheel. The sun was dipping low, staining the houses and sidewalks in shades of orange and rose. People were out walking their dogs, watering their front lawns, kids riding bikes in lazy circles. Everything looked so normal, so steady. And inside me, a storm was taking shape. The kind that makes your breath feel thin, like the air itself is shrinking. When I pulled into our driveway, I saw his car wasn't there yet. Relief washed through me, sharp and quick. I needed a moment. Just One clean breath before the confrontation I knew was coming. Inside the house, the silence felt heavier than usual. I dropped my keys on the entry cable and stood there for a full minute, trying to slow my heartbeat. The conversation with Margaret replayed in my head. Her soft voice, the confusion. I drove home with my hands still trembling on the wheel. The sun was dipping low, staining the houses and sidewalks in shades of orange and rose. People were out walking their dogs, watering their front lawns, kids riding bikes in lazy circles. Everything looked so normal, so steady. And inside me, a storm was taking shape. The kind that makes your breath feel thin, like the air itself is shrinking. When I pulled into our driveway, I saw his car wasn't there yet. Relief washed through me, sharp and quick. I needed a moment. Just one clean breath before the confrontation I knew was coming. Inside the house, the silence felt heavier than usual. I dropped my keys on the entry table and stood there for a full minute, trying to slow my heartbeat. The conversation with Margaret replayed in my head. Her soft voice, the confusion, the way she tried to protect him, even while breaking under his lies. I walked into the living room and sat on the edge of the couch, elbows on my knees, hands clasped together. How many lies have I swallowed without tasting them? The question rose up before I could stop it. Because it wasn't just his mother. It wasn't just the fake funeral. It was every small moment that suddenly felt rehearsed. The way he avoided talking about his childhood, the way he snapped when his mother asked for help, the way he kept his phone close like a life raft. And the rope, the duct tape, the storage bin, those items had no place in the story he told me. They belonged to the parts he hid. As the minutes passed, something inside me steadied. Not anger, not yet. Just clarity. By the time I heard his car pull into the driveway, that clarity had hardened into something cold and quiet. The front door opened, and I listened to the familiar sounds. His shoes clicking on the tile, the rustle of his jacket, the exhale he always did after work. When he walked into the living room and saw me sitting there in the dim light, he hesitated. "You're home early," he said, setting his bag down. I didn't answer. He frowned. "Everything okay?" I looked up at him, really looked at him. The man I had shared a bed with for 9 years, the man I had promised to love, trust, and build a life with. There were days I believed I knew him better than I knew myself. But now I felt like I was staring at a stranger wearing my husband's face. "I went to see your mother today," I said softly. His reaction was instant. Too instant. He froze. His breath caught. His eyes snapped wide, then narrowed in a slow, defensive squint. "What?" His voice cracked on the word. "I met her," I continued. "She's alive. She's alone. She's confused. And she still thinks you care about her." He swallowed hard. For a moment, I saw something like panic flicker across his face. Then it was gone, replaced by anger. "What did you do, Claire? What did you say to her?" "Does it matter?" I asked calmly. "She's alive, David. Alive. And you made me stand beside you at her funeral." "It wasn't a funeral," he snapped. "It was a performance," I cut in, because that's what it felt like. He opened his mouth, shut it, then opened it again. His face twisted into something unfamiliar. "You weren't supposed to get involved." My stomach twisted. "Not supposed to," I repeated, stunned. She's your mother. He flinched like I slapped him. No, he said sharply. You don't get it. She ruined my life. She made me feel like I was never good enough. She needed too much. She clung too hard. She made every decision harder. And that made faking her death okay? I whispered. I didn't fake anything, he hissed. I just let people believe what was easier. For me. For everyone. I stared at him. So you lied to me. He looked away. That's not how I'd put it. How would you put it? Silence. A long, suffocating silence. Finally, he muttered, Why were you even there? Why did you go snooping? Snooping. The word hit me like cold water. I wasn't snooping, I said. She called me. She was trying to reach you. She thought your number was still the same. That shut him up. He blinked. Twice. A muscle in his jaw twitched. Did you tell her about the funeral? He asked. No, I said. She's still trying to protect you. But I won't lie to her. And I won't lie for you. He rubbed his temples like he was the one suffering. Claire, you don't know what she is, he said, his voice dropping to a shaky whisper. She's manipulative. She guilt trips. She makes everything your responsibility. I couldn't breathe around her. His pain sounded real, but so did hers. And somewhere between them, his lies lived comfortably. Even if that's true, I said gently, she doesn't deserve to think her son buried her while she's still alive. He looked at me with something like fear and fury tangled together. What are you planning to do? He asked, voice low. I stood slowly. I'm bringing her home. His reaction was immediate, violent. No, he snapped. Absolutely not. She's not coming here. She needs help, I said. She needs medical care. She needs someone who won't ignore her. She needs to stay away from me, he yelled. I had never heard him raise his voice like that. Not once in 9 years. The room felt smaller. You can hate her, I said quietly. You can resent her. You can refuse to see her. I let the next sentence land with weight. You don't get to bury someone who's still breathing. He stared at me with something like fear and fury tangled together. What are you planning to do? He asked, voice low. His voice softened, soft in a dangerous way. Manipulative. Calculated. Claire, I love you. I don't want her between us. She ruins everything she touches. Please, don't let her ruin this too. It almost worked. Almost. But he forgot something. I had heard her voice. I had seen her house. I had felt the loneliness she lived with every day. You already ruined it, I whispered. The room went silent. He stepped back, hands clenched, breathing uneven. For the first time, I saw exactly who my husband was. Not broken, not grieving, not misunderstood. A man who built lies the way some people built homes. Strong enough to live in, cold enough to keep everyone out. And I knew right then, this wasn't over. Not even close. I barely slept that night. I lay on my side of the bed, the sheet bunched in my hands, staring at the faint outline of the ceiling fan above me. It sliced through the dark in slow circles. The room felt heavier than usual, as if the truth was weighing down the air. Beside me, David slept soundly. That detail haunted me. His breathing was steady, almost peaceful, as if the confrontation hadn't happened, as if the lies hadn't been dragged into the light, as if the world hadn't just shifted on its axis. He slept like a man who believed he still had control. I stared at his back and wondered how long he had been lying, not just about his mother, about everything. How many little omissions, how many small deflections, how many softened half-truths had I blindly accepted? Truth doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers in the dark. And that whisper kept me awake. At sunrise, I slipped out of bed quietly. I needed space before the day began. I made coffee, but the smell turned my stomach. My hands shook as I poured it out. I kept seeing her. Margaret sitting in her small kitchen, clutching that chipped teacup, her eyes full of exhaustion and hope. She deserved better. She deserved dignity. She deserved truth. I sat at the table for a long time before the plan came to me. Not revenge, not punishment, not anything dramatic. Just a decision. A promise to myself. I would not let that woman live alone another day. By the time David walked into the kitchen, showered and neatly dressed, I had already packed a small bag. He noticed immediately. "What's that?" "I'm going to see your mother," I said. He stiffened, the way someone does when a cold wind hits their spine. "You're not." "I am." "You don't know her," he snapped. "And you do?" I asked softly. "Well enough to bury her alive?" His jaw clenched. For a moment, I saw something dark flicker behind his eyes. "She brings nothing but trouble," he said. "You're letting her manipulate you." I held his gaze. "She didn't even know what you did. She defended you, even after hearing my name for the first time." That landed like a blow. His face shuddered, closing off emotion like he had learned the trick young. "I'm not talking about this," he muttered, grabbing his keys. "I didn't ask you to." I walked past him, bag in hand, heart pounding, but steps steady. "Claire," he called sharply, "don't do this." I paused at the doorway. "You made your choices, now I'm making mine." I didn't slam the door. I didn't raise my voice. I simply walked out. The drive to Margaret's house felt different that morning. Lighter somehow, even though the situation was anything but. When she opened the door, her face softened with relief. "I didn't think you'd come back so soon," she said. "I promised I wouldn't leave you alone." She tried to smile, but her eyes were swollen from crying. "Come in," she whispered. She had cooked something, a small pot of oatmeal with cinnamon, and the warm scent filled the kitchen. My chest tightened. The simplicity of it, the effort, the loneliness hiding underneath. We sat at the table. "Margaret," I said gently, "would you consider coming to stay with me for a while?" She blinked rapidly. "Oh, no, I couldn't impose. I'm fine here." "You're not fine," I said softly. "You're taking care of yourself with no help. Your hip pain is getting worse, and you're scared to call your own son." She looked away. "I'm used to being alone," she murmured. "That doesn't make it right." Tears filled her eyes again. "They won't want me there." "Who won't?" "You and him." I reached across the table and took her hand. "I want you there. And as for him, that's my problem now." Her bottom lip trembled. "You don't know how he gets when he feels cornered," she whispered. I squeezed her hand gently. "I'll handle him. You just focus on healing." She stared at me for a long moment. Then she nodded, slow and hesitant, but hopeful. "All right, but only for a little while. I don't want to be a burden." "You aren't a burden," I said. But she didn't believe me yet. That much I could see. Years of emotional neglect don't fade in one morning. It took us nearly an hour to gather her things. Medication, a few clothes, a pair of worn slippers, a framed photo of her holding David as a baby. She paused when she picked it up. "He loved me once," she said quietly, "when he was small." Something in my chest cracked. When we finally pulled into my driveway, Margaret's breath hitched. "This is too nice for me," she said. "It's just a house," I replied. "You're the guest. That's what matters." Inside, she looked around with cautious admiration, like she wasn't sure she was allowed to appreciate it. I led her to the guest room. "It's yours now," I said. She touched the bedspread gently, as if afraid it would crumble under her fingers. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Her gratitude was humbling and heartbreaking all at once. By late afternoon, I had settled her in, prepared tea, and helped her organize her medication. She rested on the couch with a blanket over her legs while I made dinner, soup simmering softly, warm bread warming in the oven. She watched me with quiet affection. "You remind me of myself when I was younger. I used to cook like this for Danny every night." My heart squeezed. "He never told me." She smiled sadly. "He doesn't remember the good things, only the bad." I sat beside her. "What happened between you? The real reason." She exhaled slowly. "He wanted life to be easy. I was sick often when he was growing up. Money was tight. He felt like he carried too much responsibility, too young." "That's not your fault," I said. "He was a child. Children don't see complications, only burdens." She stared into her hands. "When he grew older, he didn't want anything to do with anyone who reminded him of struggle. Not me, not his childhood home, not our past." A longing flickered in her expression. He built himself a new life, one where he didn't have to look back. It explained so much, but not enough. Because escaping pain is one thing, burying the person who loved you is another. As evening settled, we both drifted into a calm quiet, each of us wrapped in our own thoughts. For a brief moment, I believed we might have a peaceful night. I was wrong. Because just past sunset, the front door opened. Footsteps. A heavy, angry silence. Then his voice, sharp, cutting, full of disbelief. "Mom?" Margaret's whole body went still. My pulse surged. I stood up slowly, placing myself between him and her. David's eyes were wild, like someone cornered by their own reflection. "What did you do, Claire? Why is she here?" Margaret's voice trembled. I'm sorry, Danny. I didn't mean—" "Stop!" he barked at her, and something inside me snapped clean down the middle. I stepped forward, voice low but steady. "She's here because she's your mother, and because someone has to care about her." His jaw tightened. "This is my house, and I said she's not welcome." I stared at him without blinking. "This stopped being just your house the moment you lied about a funeral." He opened his mouth to argue, but I wasn't done. "I'm the beneficiary of this trust," I said quietly. And I never gave permission for you to evict her." His eyes flared with fury, and in that moment, I knew a storm was coming, one that would change everything. David stood in the doorway, chest rising and falling too fast, like he'd just run up a hill while carrying his anger on his back. Behind me, Margaret shrank into the couch cushions, her fingers twisting the blanket as if she needed something solid to hold on to. I could feel the fear radiating off her. Old fear, familiar fear, the kind that comes from years of walking on eggshells. I positioned myself just slightly in front of her, not enough to provoke him, but enough to make a point. David's eyes darted from me to his mother and back again, disbelief turning into something darker. "You had no right," he said, pointing at me like I was a stubborn child. "No right to drag her into our home. I told you, she ruins everything." "I told you a lie," I replied softly. "Multiple lies. You buried her alive in a story you built." "I didn't bury her," he snapped. "I just separated myself for my sanity." "By pretending she died?" I asked. His jaw clenched. It was easier. People stop asking questions when someone is dead. I stared at him, stunned at the bluntness. No remorse, no hesitation, just practicality. Margaret's voice broke through, small and trembling. "Danny, I didn't know you felt this way. I thought maybe I did something unforgivable." He turned to her sharply. "Stop acting like the victim." She flinched. That was it for me. I stepped forward. "David, lower your voice." He stared at me, incredulous. "Since when do you talk to me like that?" "Since I saw who you really are." Something snapped in his expression, a tiny crack he couldn't hide. He walked toward me, shoulders stiff, breath hot with frustration. "You don't understand her," he said. "You don't know what she did to me growing up." "You never told me," I reminded him quietly. "Not once. In 9 years. Because it wasn't your business. That's your mother." "Not anymore." His tone was ice. Margaret let out a shaky breath, tears filling her eyes. "Danny, I'm sorry. I know I wasn't perfect." "Oh, please," he scoffed. "Here we go with the guilt trip tears. You always do this." Her face fell. I had never felt fury like that. Not the explosive kind. The silent, tightening kind. The kind that concentrates behind your ribs until your voice becomes a blade. "Stop talking to her like that." He blinked at me as if seeing me clearly for the first time. "You're choosing her?" he asked. "No," I said. "I'm choosing what's right." He scoffed again. "Fine, you want her here? Then I'm leaving." He grabbed his keys and stormed toward the door. I didn't follow. I didn't plead. He paused only when Margaret whispered, "Danny, don't go." He didn't look back. The door slammed so hard the walls shook. Margaret covered her face with trembling hands, shoulders shaking. I sat beside her, pulled her gently into my arms, and let her cry until her breathing slowed. "I didn't want to upset him," she whispered. "You didn't," I said. "You just existed. That's what upset him." Word travels fast in small neighborhoods, especially when a man storms out of his house, peeling out of the driveway like a teenager with a tantrum. The next morning, while I was helping Margaret take a slow walk down the sidewalk, my neighbor, Mrs. Hanson, stepped outside with her pruning shears. She froze when she saw Margaret. "Oh my goodness!" she gasped. "Is that—" I nodded gently. "Yes, David's mother. She's staying with us." Her mouth fell open. "But didn't we just go to her funeral?" Margaret winced. I placed a steadying hand on her elbow. "It was a misunderstanding," I said calmly. "She's very much alive." Behind Mrs. Hanson, her husband peeked out from the garage, accidentally banging his shoulder against the frame. It didn't take long. By noon, 3 neighbors had texted me asking if everything was okay. By evening, someone had posted a vague message on the neighborhood group chat. Some people pretend their problems are dead instead of dealing with them. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Others chimed in. "It's cruel to abandon your own parents." Some lies catch up eventually. People weren't naming names, but everyone knew. And David? He was seeing all of it, because he didn't block the chat, and I could see the read receipts. The next blow came the following day. We were sitting at the table having lunch, simple chicken soup and rolls, when Margaret's old flip phone buzzed. She answered. On the other end, a woman's voice exploded through the tiny speaker. "Margaret, are you okay? I just heard from Karen. You're alive?" Margaret's face turned pale. Yes, I'm here with Claire." The woman continued in a rush. "What is going on? Why is everyone saying you had a funeral? Why did your son—" Margaret's hand shook so violently that I gently took the phone and spoke. "Hi, this is Claire. I'm David's wife." "Oh, thank God," the woman said. "Is she safe? Are you safe? Is David there?" "No," I said. "He's not here right now." "Good," she muttered. "Someone needs to talk to him. This is beyond unacceptable." Turns out it was his cousin, Ellen, the same one who held him at the funeral. Kind woman, soft voice, very observant. When I explained, briefly, cautiously, what happened, she let out a long, angry sigh. "I knew something was off," she said. "The closed casket, the rushed service, he never let us see her body. We all thought it was his grief." Her voice hardened. "But it was guilt, wasn't it?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. From that moment onward, the whispers turned into phone calls into texts, texts into cousins showing up at our door, bringing groceries, blankets, old photo albums, and more love than Margaret had seen in years. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't alone. And for the first time in his life, he couldn't control the narrative. 3 days after he stormed out, he finally returned. I was in the kitchen peeling carrots for dinner. Margaret was resting on the couch. The house was calm, filled with the soft hum of the fridge and the faint scent of herbs on the stove. The front door opened quietly. He didn't slam it this time. He closed it gently. Too gently. I wiped my hands on a towel and stepped out to the hallway. He looked smaller, eyes tired, hair unkempt, like someone who hadn't slept in days. Behind me, Margaret sat up slowly. His eyes flicked to her, then back to me. "So, everyone knows," he said. "Yes," I replied. "And you didn't defend me?" There was no accusation this time, only a hollow kind of defeat. I told the truth. That's all I did. Laugh bitterly. Truth. What a lovely weapon. "It's not a weapon," I said. "It's freedom." "For who?" he snapped. "For all of us." He swallowed hard, and for the first time since this began, I saw something break in him. Not anger. Shame. Real, sinking shame. He looked at his mother again. "I didn't want you to suffer," he whispered. "I just wanted a life that wasn't heavy." Margaret pressed her hand to her chest, eyes warm and wounded all at once. "Oh, sweetheart, life is heavy, but we carry each other." He closed his eyes, and for the first time in years, he let himself crumble right there in our hallway.